For 3 years, it was the front door to Bitcoin. If you wanted to buy the new digital currency that the internet was buzzing about, you almost certainly went through one website. At its peak, it handled more than 7 out of every 10 Bitcoin trades on Earth. And then, over the course of a single week in February 2014, it simply went dark. Hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin, gone. Hundreds of thousands of people locked out of their money. The largest theft in the short history of digital currency. And the strangest part of all, it began life as a website for trading fantasy card game cards. This is the story of Mt. Gox. The name makes no sense until you know where it came from. In 2007, a programmer named Jed McCaleb registered a domain, mtgox.com. It stood for Magic, the Gathering Online Exchange, a place where players could trade the cards from a popular fantasy game like they were stocks. That idea fizzled out in a few months. The domain sat mostly unused. But in 2010, McCaleb read about a strange new experiment called Bitcoin and realized the community had no easy way to buy or sell it. So he repurposed the old card trading domain into something new, a Bitcoin exchange. The name stuck, even though the cards were long gone. In 2011, McCaleb handed the site off to a French developer living in Japan named Mark Karpeles. Under his control, Mt. Gox exploded. As Bitcoin's price climbed from pennies to hundreds of dollars, Mt. Gox became the beating heart of the entire market. By early 2014, processing the clear majority of all Bitcoin transactions in the world. If Bitcoin had a capital city, this was it. But behind the scenes, according to later investigations, the foundation was already rotten. Here is what makes Mt. Gox different from a typical heist. There was no single dramatic break-in. Instead, a security firm that later analyzed the blockchain concluded that coins had been quietly drained from the exchange's online wallet over years, beginning as early as late 2011. Drip by drip, while the company kept operating, kept taking deposits, kept showing customers balances that, increasingly, weren't fully backed by real coins. For a long time, almost no one noticed. The thief, or thieves, were patient. By February 2014, the cracks were impossible to hide. Mt. Gox blamed a technical flaw and froze customer withdrawals. People who tried to pull their Bitcoin out simply couldn't. Then, on February 24th, all trading stopped. Hours later, the website went blank, just an empty page where the world's biggest Bitcoin exchange used to be. 4 days after that, Mt. Gox filed for bankruptcy protection in Tokyo. The admission was staggering. Roughly 850,000 Bitcoin were missing, about 750,000 belonging to customers, and 100,000 of the company's own. At the time, that was worth somewhere around $450 million. It was close to 7% of all the Bitcoin that existed. There was one small reprieve. Weeks later, the company said it had found about 200,000 of the lost Bitcoin sitting in an old digital wallet it had forgotten about, used before 2011. That brought the missing total down to around 650,000 coins. But the bigger questions, who took the rest, and how much the man in charge knew, went to court. In 2019, a Tokyo court delivered a split verdict on Mark Karpeles. He was found guilty of one charge, manipulating data to inflate the company's holdings. But on the most serious accusation, embezzlement, stealing customer money, he was acquitted. He received a suspended sentence, meaning no prison time as long as he stayed out of trouble. To this day, the bulk of the missing Bitcoin has never been definitively traced to any single culprit in a courtroom. And here is the twist that turns this from a tragedy into something stranger. When Mt. Gox collapsed, the missing customer coins were worth around $450 million. But the trustee managing the bankruptcy held on to the Bitcoin that was recovered. And Bitcoin's price didn't stay where it was, it climbed and climbed and climbed. 11 years later, in 2026, those leftover coins are worth not millions, but billions. As of mid-2026, the estate still holds tens of thousands of Bitcoin, valued in the billions of dollars, and the deadline to finally repay creditors has been pushed back again, to October of 2026. Some of the people who lost their Bitcoin in 2014 are now, on paper, being repaid in an asset worth vastly more than what they lost. Others are still waiting, more than a decade on. Mt. Gox became the cautionary tale that shaped a generation of crypto. It's the reason for the warning you'll still hear today. not your keys, not your coins. It proved that putting your money on an exchange means trusting that exchange completely, and that trust can vanish in a week. A website that started as a place to trade fantasy cards ended up teaching the entire financial internet a brutal lesson about who actually holds your money. At Shinwari Files, we follow the evidence, not the noise. Subscribe, and we'll see you in the next case file.